If there is no God, there is no fundamental, firm foundation to build a case for the value of human life. Why? Because if there is no God, your number came up in a Monte Carlo game. So did mine. We are cosmic accidents.
Yes, I think that's beautiful. I think that's a wonderful thing. I think that we have a duty to make the most of it.
A duty?
Talk about me being the president of the Secular Student Alliance. My friends at the Secular Student Alliance are here to protest your presence. Brothers Under Christ, of course, has invited you. That's all right.
Well, sounds like you're tolerant of Brothers Under Christ.
Certainly. But we'd like you to know that your message is not universally good or universally accepted. We have another side to the argument, and that's that your arguments are not inclusive to everyone. They are exclusive to Christians. They promote what is called tribalism. Not to say that you're a member of a tribe, but it helps to create a tribal mentality around being Christian, and that's not at all what we want to have in America. That's not my idea of America. So what I'd like to do is ask you, do you really think that you're helping?
I am convinced to the root of my being that if you and I put our faith in the man who died on a cross, and as he was dying, he prayed, Father, forgive these people who have nailed me to this cross. If you do that, you will become the essence of a tolerant person.
Go on.
Do you think tolerance is good?
Certainly.
Okay. Well, Jesus Christ points out that tolerance is not an option for a follower of his. Jesus Christ points out, through his dying on a cross and praying for his enemies, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Jesus modeled real tolerance. So tolerance is not me saying to you, hey Brian, you're an atheist, I'm a Christian, we agree. That's being brain dead. Rather, tolerance is, Brian, I respect your right to be an atheist, I respect your right to be a secularist, and now I want to find out, what is your problem with God? What is your problem with Christ? Why don't you believe in Christ? Why don't you believe in God?
It's easy, really. The reason why I don't believe in God is the reason why I don't believe in leprechauns or unicorns. It's simply impossible to say that they exist. Now, the problem is, of course, that we have these moral teachings that are based around God in the Christian tradition and in all of these other traditions. But we have other ways of making moral decisions. I'd like to congratulate you, by the way, on your ability to not own slaves. You definitely didn't get that from the Bible.
Yes, I did get that from the Bible.
No?
The Bible insists that slavery is wrong.
It insists that Christian slaves remain bound to their masters.
No, it does not.
Yes, it
What it
does.
says is, Peter addresses and Paul address the issue, and if a slave is a follower of Christ, they are to respect their master. When Paul says, respect your master, when Peter says, respect your master, he is not saying that slavery is good. The same way when I go into a prison, and when I go into a cell of a man who has kidnapped, raped, and murdered little boys, and then after that I go to the gymnasium to play with the other inmates, and they look me in the face and say, hey man, how can you talk to such a piece of dirt? Don't you know what he's done to little boys? And I say to them, yes, I deplore what he has done to little boys, but I still respect him as a human being created in the image of God. See, Brian, that's what you got to grapple with. That's what Paul and Peter are teaching followers of Christ who happen to be slaves. He's not saying slavery is good. What he is saying is you respect people, even when those people do wrong. You don't respect the wrong that they do, but you respect people. The same way when I walk into a prison cell and I'm confronted by a man who's kidnapped, murdered, and raped little boys, I don't respect what he did. Instead, I respect him as a human being created in the image of God. Does that make any sense?
It does, but I submit to you that your respect for him as a human being comes from the fact that you're a human being, not from the fact that you believe in God.
Okay, Brian, but the question is, why are human beings valuable? Why? Why respect a human being more than an ant? Why would you step on an ant but not on a human being? What is the basis of human worth? How do you think that through, Brian?
I reject the question. I don't think that there is an answer.
Thanks for your honesty. You're absolutely right. If there is no God, there is no fundamental, firm foundation to build a case for the value of human life. Why? Because if there is no God, your number came up in a Monte Carlo game. So did mine. We
Yes.
are cosmic accidents.
Yes, I think that's beautiful. I think that's a wonderful thing. I think that we have a duty to make the most of it.
A duty? Who's your duty to?
Each other.
And where does that come from?
The fact that we are humans. The fact that we have sentience. We have a responsibility just from that.
Yes? And a bug is a bug. And a horse is a horse. And a pig is a pig. And a human is a human. So what? What is. We all realize what is. That doesn't mean that we have innate value just because we are. The tree is. The rock is. It exists. That doesn't mean there's innate value. You live your life, all of my atheist friends live their lives as if people have value. But the problem is, there's no basis for that value. Because my atheist friends believe we're simply good-looking monkeys evolved to a higher order. Do you treat your children the same way you treat a monkey? Would you allow a zookeeper to put your child in a cage? I don't think so. So why do you differentiate between a monkey and your child?
This is a bit of a non sequitur, don't you think?
Non sequitur? Not when you have children.
You've begun this argument with tautology after tautology. All of these things are. That's by nature of them being things. What's the point of going into value arguments after that? How are you getting the question of value?
Because, Brian, these three friends of yours who are part of your secular society,
Hey!
you treasure them. You value them. You view them as important. You treasure their friendship, don't you?
I also treasure your friendship.
Well, thank you, Brian, and I treasure your friendship, okay? But then the question is, why do we treasure each other? Why do we value each other? Why is any human being worth anything? If we're simply cosmic accidents, we're only worth what we attach worth to. And if we attach worth to ourselves, great. But if we don't, so be it. In reality, we don't have worth. In reality, we're cosmic accidents if there is no God.
But in reality, I've attached worth to you and to everyone else.
Great. But what happens if tomorrow you wake up with a stomach ache and you decide that I'm not worth much? Does that change my worth because tomorrow you decide I'm not worth much?
I don't think a stomachache would do that. The worst stomachache in history. No, that is an immutable thing.
All right, Brian, I'm not going to tie it to a stomach ache, but I think you know exactly what I'm talking, hopefully. You know very well that today and tomorrow you are not always going to treat people as if they have worth.
Certainly I am.
You and I are going to be mean. No, you and I are going to be selfish and mean. You and I are going to demean people in some way by ignoring hurting people.
Speak
By
for
being
yourself.
absorbed with myself and my agenda, I will walk over people. So will you, Brian. We both are sinners. In other words, we will devalue people through sexist attitudes, through racist attitudes, through pride, through selfishness. We will devalue people, both of us. That's why we need God's forgiveness, because we both are dirty, rotten sinners.
Speak for yourself.
I am a dirty, rotten sinner. Are you a morally perfect person?
I have morality.
Are you
I
morally
make moral
perfect?
decisions.
Do you always live up to your moral standards?
If I don't live up to my moral standards, I recognize that immediately.
Good.
Not immediately.
All right, thanks for your honesty. Neither do I. I don't acknowledge my sins
I'm willing to
immediately either.
recognize that, certainly. I don't think there needs to be a God involved for me to make changes to myself.
Well, when you feel guilty, who do you ask forgiveness from?
The person that I've wronged, I suppose.
Good. So you ask forgiveness from the person you've wronged. Very good. Now, according to Christ, that person has been created by God. And therefore, when I demean a person, I'm saying, hey, God, when you made that person, you did a lousy job. That's false. When God made all of us, He did a beautiful, wonderful job. That's why demeaning each other, however we do it, is sinful. It's wrong.
If I don't believe in God, how can I apologize to Him? How can I say that I've demeaned God, a God that I don't believe in?
You're right. Intellectually, you don't believe in God. I hear you and I respect what you're saying. But you see, Brian, you can't live that out. Instead, the way you live your life is as if those three friends behind you, even I, you've said, have innate worth. Well, if a person has worth, what's the basis of that worth? Where does worth come from?
We're going around in circles a little bit.
Yeah, I understand, and I'm not giving up because I'm trying to help as many people here understand the point. It was made magnificently by Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, the great German philosopher.
I know him.
He poured scorn on his atheistic, humanistic friends who said, there is no God, but people really are valuable. But love really is important. And Nietzsche said, I'm sorry, fellas, you don't have the intellectual courage to face the logical conclusions of what you say you believe. If there is no God, love is not real, human worth is not real, morality is all relative, something's not absolutely evil or absolutely good, it's all relative, which means life is meaningless. I respect Nietzsche for the way he realized if there is no God, life is a crapshoot. It's ultimately meaningless.
I'm sorry to hear that. I feel love every day. I feel love for my fellow man.
And that is one of the biggest pieces of evidence that God loves you and that He's drawing you to Himself.
No, how can you say that there's a man in the sky after that? It's insane.
You're right. I don't believe in a man in the sky, okay? There's a spiritual being, a mind, who is really, really big, who created this cosmos, and this God really loves you and loves me and wants to live in relationship with us. Now, Brian, if that's true, that's the most important news in the universe.
It would be.
Exactly. So that's why you got to read the Gospels and check out.
That's a big if, don't you think? That's a real big if.
Not based on the way you want to view people as having worth.
No.
Not based on the way you want to live your life, that good and evil are real. Not based on the evidence that you want to live your life as if there's meaning to life. See, all of that stuff points to the existence of some type of God.
No, it points to me being a friendly person.
Well, that's great that you're a friendly person. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
But remember, if you define friendliness tomorrow the opposite way you define it today, that's totally legit. Remember? You just define it, right? So if today you define a friend as being someone who is compassionate and loving and honest, but tomorrow you say a friend is someone who cuts people off at the knees. That's not wrong. Because there is no absolute right or wrong. It's all relative. So if tomorrow you want to define friendship as stealing someone's backpack, that's legitimate.
Let me ask you something. Does God also have the capacity to do this? Does he say now it is good to cut people off at the knees? Or rather, can he say this? Or does he say things are good because they're already good?
Great question. Because God is eternal, meaning by that God has a character that is eternal, and because God's character is just and good, the value of justice has been defined by God's character throughout eternity.
Where did his character come from? Is his character built around things that are already good?
No. God didn't come from anywhere because God is eternal. God is an uncaused being. He is eternal, which means God doesn't come from anywhere. He's eternal.
Do you realize this is the only concept that has no cause? The only concept in the human discourse that has no cause. We say that the Big Bang happened, but we don't know what caused it. We don't say it definitely has no cause. How can anything not have a cause?
Great point. So then the question is, 15 billion years ago approximately, what caused or who caused the Big Bang?
We don't know.
All right, well, what you've got to ask yourself is it more plausible to think that the Big Bang just happened in isolation?
Yes.
Or is it more plausible to believe that there's a cause? If there is a cause for the Big Bang, who or what is that cause?
We don't know. That's absolutely outside of the theory.
Okay. Albert Einstein, who had a decent IQ, to put it mildly, realized that the Big Bang clearly pointed to the existence of some type of God. Einstein did not want there to be a God because Einstein was a pantheist. He worshipped nature. That's why Einstein loved the idea that nature, matter and energy are eternal. Einstein began to realize, oops, if the Big Bang is true, it means that matter and energy and nature are not eternal. It means there's some type of God. And that's why Einstein put the fudge factor into his mathematical equation to try and disprove the Big Bang. Sir Einstein realized if the Big Bang occurred about 15 billion years ago, it points to some type of intelligent mind, some type of creator. And that's why Einstein moved on to say, after the discovery of the Big Bang, I want to know God's thoughts.
The fudge factor in his equations is for the expansion of the universe, not for God.
The fudge factor was used by Einstein to disprove the Big Bang.
No, it's
Yes, it
to
was.
make it general. It's to make it actually applicable to what we see in the universe.
Einstein was confronted by a mathematician who said, you've made a mistake mathematically. And you probably did it intentionally because it's not a difficult thing to see. And Einstein admitted it. I put that fudge factor into my equation because I realize the logical consequences of the Big Bang theory. It points to some type of creator. It's that simple. That's what Einstein clearly communicated.
Even if Einstein had said that, would he have been somehow privy to the existence of God? Isaac Newton did the same. He spent the rest of his life after 27 trying to prove some mystical hand-wavy nonsense. All of his achievements were when he was a young man. Now, we don't benefit from that. His argument that there is a God is not what makes the theory amazing. That's either Newton or Einstein. What makes it amazing is that it actually describes the universe. God isn't part of that. If he created the universe, then at the very most, he must have set it in motion and done nothing else for the rest of the history of the universe.
And that's what Thomas Jefferson believed. That's deism. God is the mind that created the universe, set it in motion, and steps back and is an aloof deity, uninvolved. And Thomas Jefferson and the deists believed exactly that, Brian. You articulated that well.
Thank you.
What Jesus Christ insisted is, God is not an aloof deity. God actually loves you and me and created us to live in relationship with us. And of course, the incarnation of Christ is this incredible claim that the God who created the cosmos has stepped into space and time by becoming a human being in Jesus of Nazareth.
That's exactly what I'm saying is impossible.
Okay, why is that impossible?
Because to say that to say that there has been a God intervening in our universe since the Big Bang is directly in contrast with the idea of a Big Bang.
How?
Because God must have set everything in motion since. He cannot intervene afterwards.
Why can God not intervene afterwards?
Because he doesn't exist.
Thank you for your honesty. And you and I both know that was a cop-out.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. I like your honesty, Brian. I like it.
In this hypothetical, there would have been a God who set every value, every physical constant, and since then, those are immutable. He would be adhering to his own rules 100%. He cannot intervene.
He cannot intervene. All right, what happens if God chooses to limit his power by giving me a free will? If I haul back and slap him in the face and turn to you and say, Brian, God made me hit him in the face, would you believe that?
No, I'd say you were a jerk.
Good. Well put, Brian. All right, so what Jesus and the Bible insist is the all-powerful God chose to partially limit his power by giving me a free will, which means I can take out my wallet and give him money for dinner, or I can haul back and smack him in the face. God makes me do neither. But God on a day of judgment will judge me if I choose to haul back and slap him in the face. He will judge me. Why? Why would God judge me? Because I have free will, which means I'm responsible for slapping him. Does that make any sense?
It made sense until you said that there would be a day of judgment. But once again, God is not going to intervene. I posit to you that it's because he doesn't exist. But in the hypothetical, the hypothetical that allows for the existence of God while still explaining our universe.
Right. Okay.
He simply does not intervene because he's already set the universe in motion.
All right. Now you, Brian, are an atheist, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, right now, where is Adolf Hitler, Mother Teresa, and the people who died in Paris at the hands of the terrorists last week? Where are all those people?
They do not exist.
Exactly. They do not exist. They're all in the same place, the fertilizer pit, according to your worldview. Which means, Brian, ultimately...
I like to think that we've treated some of them with more dignity than that.
Brian, if you limit reality to matter and energy, it's rather obvious that Hitler's body is decomposed, Mother Teresa's body is decomposed, and the bodies of the people blown away by the terrorists last week in Paris are in the process of decomposing. We're all becoming dirt if there is no God. Now, in light of that fact, Brian, it doesn't matter, ultimately, whether you become Adolf Hitler II or Mother Teresa II, whether you become like the people in Paris who got blown away, or whether you become like the terrorists who blew them away. It's all meaningless, because we're all headed to the same place. And what you do with your life is ultimately meaningless, it's ultimately insignificant. Do you see, that is why despair is honest atheism. Does that make any sense?
No. I think of myself as an honest atheist, and I don't despair at all.
I think you are running away from the logical consequences of your atheism. And I'm not saying that just as a theist. Nietzsche said that, Camus said it, Sartre said it, all of them brilliant atheists, as did Bertrand Russell. You can't escape the conclusion, logically, that if there is no mind who created you for a purpose, and if there is no day of judgment when you will have to give an answer for what you've done with your life, then it doesn't matter what you do with your life. So if you want to be Adolf Hitler II, go right ahead. If you want to be Mother Teresa II, go right ahead. It's just your choice. Choice is God. And if you choose to be Hitler II, that's your choice. If you choose to be Teresa II, that's your choice. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong. It's all relative. Meaning by that, it doesn't really matter.
I think I've made clear my position on this matter, but I would like to thank you for having me. And
Ryan, it's been a delight to meet you, man.
I'd like to encourage you, and you, and you, and all of you to join me at my Secular Student Alliance meetings on Wednesday in Wagner Hall, room 420. I promise that's not by intention. It was simply assigned to us. In Wagner Hall, room 420 at 5 p.m. on Wednesdays. Please join us for more conversations like this. Thank you.
Can I get a free hug? You say you give free hugs.
Yeah.
All right, Brian, here we go.
I'll hug you too.
All right, man.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
And you can get free hugs. And you can get free hugs.
Conversation. When you have an enormous institution and a huge amount of people behind you on one side and a very small number of dissenters, then that's not free speech.
Tell me who's behind me. What's this big institution that's behind me?
Well, the majority of people here are listening very reverently. This isn't like a two-sided debate.
Sir, no one has forced you to stand here. No one's forced me to stand here. I'm under the impression that you have a free will and you've chosen to be there. And I respect that. And these people choose to sit here because they choose to. I don't know who they are. And I don't have any big organization behind me, for crying out loud. So why don't you get in touch with reality? It's a refreshing exercise.
Well, I was hesitant to stand up anyway, but I would actually like to ask two questions, and they're coming from my heart. Okay?
Okay.
As someone who has been raised outside of the church, and I just don't take the Bible as evidence, is there any way that I could be converted? Is that the only way that you can reach out to someone that doesn't have any kind of cultural upbringing, that hasn't been raised with already those doubts? How can you speak to someone who's absolutely legitimately an atheist? Please answer directly.
I have many friends who are former atheists. And these people who are former atheists relax their mind. They tried to be as objective as possible and to look at the evidence that God exists. And then once they move from atheism to theism, then they relax their mind. They tried to be as objective as possible and read the Gospels, not as the Word of God, simply as accurate history, because the evidence is the Gospels give us some accurate history. And confronted by the lifestyle, teachings, death, and resurrection of Christ, they saw the evidence is Christ is reliable, and they chose to put their faith in Him.
So you said that there were two steps there. The second step, once you've acknowledged that there could be some sort of all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good thing, once you've done that, that's fine. It's that first step that I'm really concerned with. So you're saying that there's actually fact-based evidence that is best explained through an existence of God.
Philosophical evidence, yes, sir.
I'm not talking specifically about experiments or anything like that, but even philosophical evidence.
Philosophical evidence.
You think that's the best, most rational explanation?
Yes.
Okay, so we have thousands of years of history of debates about these kind of things, and I don't want to revisit those. But do you have an answer for someone who's already gone through those and hasn't been convinced of the factual accuracy or of Occam's razor? I mean, if I honestly think that there are just more reliable descriptions that match the facts better, theory that just has fewer things that you have to assume that explain it just as well. If I'm in that position, knowing that I am a limited person and could be wrong, is there room for faith? That was kind of a technical question. Would you like me to try to repeat it? Mm-hmm. So, do you think that it's possible to both think that the best answer is atheism? That I can logically disprove the existence of the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good. Yet, through knowing my own limitation, through knowing that logic itself can be flawed, that our brains cannot understand everything, is that enough of a doubt to admit the kind of faith that's required to believe in God?
Sir, all you've got to do is look at the evidence for the reliability of Christ. Then you say, no, I'm sorry. Not enough evidence. I can't believe. But when you say that, what you are clearly saying is, before I trust anything to be true, it must meet this level of evidence. So my two questions for you then are, in light of the fact that Jesus Christ is not supported by enough evidence, what is the object that you have chosen to trust in? And secondly, what is the preponderance of evidence that supports this option as being more reliable than Christ?
I would say that the discussion isn't between two different things that explain the environment that we see, but it's a very specific proposition of either an all-knowing, all-powerful God exists, or it doesn't. And I believe that the evidence supports the second. And I don't think that you need to, that argument specifically requires there to be something else that you believe in. Just like, I mean, you can talk about the non-existence of something. If it logically would impact your life in some way, and it doesn't impact your life in that way, then it doesn't exist, without positing something else instead.
Tonight, when you put your head on your pillow, tonight when I put my head on my pillow, like it or not, you are living for something or someone. Like it or not, I'm living for someone or something. You have said the reason that you cannot believe in Christ is because of a lack of evidence.
No, I said an evidence against. That's a very important difference.
All right, fine. Evidence against.
Okay.
So what I need to challenge you to do is explain to me what or who you are living for and why. What's all the evidence that points to whatever the option is you've chosen other than Christ? What's this overwhelming evidence that has convinced you that this option is more trustworthy than Christ?
Well, we're talking about two different things here, and I'm trying to answer your question. This is the only way I know how. I'm talking about whether something exists or not, and you brought in value. You brought in why are you living? What are you living for? Why are you good? Something like that. Like, what is your purpose? And the question that I was asking was very much about what exists. And if God does not exist, frankly, if nothing above me exists, that doesn't imply that I have nothing to live for.
Right.
Yeah, and I do definitely have things to live for that I can specifically point to that have nothing to do with whether there's a God.
Right. That's right. I know that.
Okay, then I don't understand why there's a connection there.
For some reason, you and the two gentlemen before, I'm not sure that you guys respect language the way I do.
How do you mean?
I agree with those who say that language can just be a power move to assert your power. And that happens at times. But I'm convinced that if we take language seriously and if we listen to each other, we can have meaningful conversation. I thought I just said to you, tonight, when you put your head on your pillow, like it or not, you're going to have to acknowledge you're living for something or someone.
Yes.
Like it or not, when I put my head on my pillow tonight, I'm going to have to acknowledge I'm living for someone or something.
I agree with that.
We both have faith. Now, you have said to me crystal clearly that there is not enough evidence that God exists, and you didn't want to hear me go over that evidence, and I respect that. And you have also clearly said that there's not enough evidence that Jesus Christ is reliable. Fine, no problem. But when you say to me, the reason you can't believe that God exists, the reason you can't believe that Jesus Christ is the truth is because of lack of evidence, in order not to be an intellectual hypocrite, I'm asking you, what do you live for, and what's this preponderance of evidence that convinces you that this option is superior to God, to Christ?
I can answer the question. I just didn't think it was relevant to the conversation. I believe in flourishing, in human flourishing, in eudaimonia. I believe that we have goodness in our lives, that there are good things to experience, and good things to learn and be. I mean, there is an inherent goodness to human life that has no relationship with anything higher than humanity. And once you acknowledge that there's something higher than humanity, it belittles us. I specifically, just so I don't get off topic, that what I live for is flourishing.
Who defines flourishing?
I do, for myself.
Fine. And the KKK defines flourishing for themselves.
That's fine.
It's
that doesn't
fine?
mean they're right.
And the terrorists who bombed and shot people in Paris define flourishing for themselves.
Yeah, but now you're making, so you asked what I live for. You did not say, do I believe in some sort of absolute good?
I did not. I asked you, how do you define flourishing? Who defines flourishing?
We each define flourishing.
Okay. Now, if you think about it, you're going to realize you've thought it one way, defined flourishing one way.
That's fine.
The terrorists have obviously defined it another way.
Fine.
Nobody's right, nobody's wrong, it's all relative.
I'm not talking about ethics. That's why I said this was outside of the realm of the conversation. This is an
Flourishing
ethical
does not
question.
include ethics?
Excuse me?
Flourishing does not include ethics?
You asked what I live for.
Yeah, flourishing, you said.
Yeah, that's not an ethical statement. That's a
Does that
psychological
include
statement.
ethics? To flourish as a human being, does that include understanding what's good? I thought you used the
No.
word goodness.
It includes goodness. It doesn't understand it does not include the understanding of goodness.
It
my-
includes goodness,
my-
but not the understanding of
My
goodness.
moral imperative is
Language
to
is breaking
flourish.
down.
No, my moral imperative is to flourish. My moral imperative is not. It does not include having some sort of ultimate goodness. I don't have that claim on reality. I just said earlier in my honest question, one that I've asked of priests in the past when I was really questioning. My honest question is faith compatible with this idea? That's a very specific question. Okay.
With flourishing?
With the fact that my logic is limited, I could be wrong. I know that I could be wrong. When you take that same idea and apply it to flourishing, yes, I am going to do my utmost to be a good person, but that does not mean that I know what good is. I don't lay any sort of claim to absolute goodness.
Like it or not, you have to make a judgment call on what the terrorists did in Paris. They define that as flourishing, as their goodness. Now, you just can't live in a vacuum and say, well, it really doesn't matter, it's irrelevant. You have to make a judgment call. Is that right or wrong? You have to make a judgment call. Is the KKK right or wrong in denigrating black people and elevating Aryan supremacy? You can't just live in a vacuum and say, well, it's irrelevant. It's not irrelevant. It's real life. So who defines flourishing? And if you define it, then what makes your definition right and the KKK or the terrorist definition wrong?
Our disagreement isn't about what flourishing is. Our disagreement seems to be that you think that there has to be this objective rule, and if I'm not following that, you even specifically said it earlier, that's why I stood up. You accused anyone who does not have an absolute idea of ethics as being a relativist. You're accusing me of being a relativist and saying that I believe this and someone else believes that, and that we're both right in our own spheres. And there are other ethical views besides absolutism and relativism. Like you can't set up this false dichotomy and say either I'm making some sort of absolute claim or what I'm saying is useless. That's just totally unfair and doesn't match our human experience. So, I mean,
It matches my experience totally, as it does Camus, Sartre, and Nietzsche, Bertrand Russell, and all the great atheistic thinkers who had the intellectual honesty to acknowledge if there is no God, there is no mind prior to the human mind, which means it's obviously the human mind that defines justice and injustice, what it means to flourish or not flourish, what it means to live a good life or not to live a good life. It's all the creation of the human mind. It's a human fantasy. My fantasy is not superior to your fantasy. Your fantasy is not superior to my fantasy. It's all relative. And I'm saying, sir, I don't think you can live that way. I think,
agree.
I could be wrong, I think you live as if the terrorist attacks in Paris, France were absolutely wrong. You see, you can't say that if you're going to hold to what you believe in, which is there is no God, morality is relative. I define flourishing, I define goodness for myself. Fine. If what you say is true, if what you believe is true, then have the intellectual honesty to say the terrorists define good, flourishing life their own way. They're not wrong, I'm not right. It's all in taste. It's a matter of taste.
In case it's not obvious, I do think that atrocities are wrong. In case it's not obvious, I think that there are incredibly bad things happening in the world and that we have a personal responsibility to stand up and do something about it.
I am sure you do.
Our disagreement's not about that. Our disagreement is about whether there's an intermediate ground, not even intermediate, putting it on a spectrum is false, but something that's neither absolutism nor relativism. An example from a relatively Christian person is Immanuel Kant. He said that there is a transcendental mind, that people come together, not literally come together, but there is an understanding among humans of what is right and wrong. And it's not an individual person, but neither is it an absolute thing. There are other ways of looking at this besides this false dichotomy. So that I think that maybe I'm getting a little too technical, but I mean, honestly, I wanted to ask the question about, given that I just don't see the evidence, but is the knowledge of my own lack enough to admit faith? And it seems like what you're saying is, no, you have to admit the evidence. And what that means to me is that I can't have faith then. So that's my conclusion here, unless you'd like to try to answer that question.
The reason it's so frustrating to talk with you is because I don't think you listen to me very carefully.
I'm sorry. I feel like I have been. I'm sorry if we're not.
I said, sir, you have faith. I have faith. Don't you remember I talked about tonight? Both of us are going to put our heads on our pillows. Sure, I went over twice with you.
Yes, but that's
you're very
not
smart.
answering
Well,
my
there's a
question.
problem. Yes, I am answering your question. Not with a yes/no answer. Not with a yes/no answer. I'm trying to point out to you that every atheist, every agnostic, every Muslim, Jew, Christian, we all have faith. What does that mean? It means that all of us have to deal with the basic fundamental questions. Why is a human being valuable? Is there a purpose to life? Why do I behave ethically the way I do? Is there life after death or is there not? None of us can scientifically prove that our answers to any of those four questions are absolutely true. Instead, they are philosophical questions that you have to use logic, experience, observation to answer. We all answer them, though. All of us have answers to the question, is a human being worth anything? Yes or no? Is there a purpose to life? Yes or no? Is it right or wrong to bomb people in Paris and be part of the KKK? Yes or no? Is there life after death or not? Yes or no? We all have to struggle with those issues. You have no choice. Why? Because you have to live life. That's why. You all answer them. Now guess what? All of us have faith when we answer those questions. None of us can prove that our answers to any of those questions is right. So sir, please don't walk away from here telling me or thinking that I didn't say you have faith. I know you have got faith. Same way I've got faith. You just have a different faith from me. That's all. An atheist has faith, just a different faith than I do. We all have faith, trusting that something is true, not because we can prove it, but hopefully because we've got evidence. And that's why I pressed you, sir, and said, what's your faith in, and what's the evidence that whatever it is that you believe in is reliable? So I've been straight as an arrow with you, sir.
I agree with everything you just said, honestly.
Well, good.
No, that's not. The problem is that that's not speaking to whether there's a God. And I'm specifically asking about it.
No, you cut me off at the knees when it came to answering that.
I'm sorry? How?
You cut me off intellectually at the knees, because I started to answer you, and you said, I don't want to go through all those arguments that have gone over the past 2,000 years over whether God exists or not.
No, yeah, you're right.
You cut me off at the knees intellectually. So let's not act like, oh yeah, you've come out here with an open mind, inviting me to explain to you why I believe God exists.
No,
You
that's
didn't.
not what I'm asking. It's
You
honestly
didn't.
not.
You cut me right off.
I'm not asking you to explain why you believe in God. I'm really not.
I know
because
you're
I've
not.
been doing that for 20 years.
Right.
What I want to know is, given that I've already decided that the evidence doesn't support it, is the question done? Is there further work to be done here? If I know the best evidence supports that there's no God, is there further work? Should I still keep looking?
Yeah.
Simply because of the knowledge of my own imperfection.
Yeah, you sure should. And I told you why. Because like it or not, you have to answer the question, is human life valuable? If so, why?
Well, I've answered those. It has nothing to do with God.
Yeah, and you're up a creek without a paddle when it comes to explaining why human life has value if there is no God. Innate, intrinsic value.
Yeah.
If there is no God, I give my life value, you give your life value, or society gives your life value, but it's not innate and intrinsic.
And
Which
you think
means
God makes
if
it
you
give us
happen to be
intrinsic value?
born at the time of the Dred Scott decision, and you happen to be a black person, tough luck. You are 3/5 the value of white folks according to the U.S. Supreme Court. That's what society has decided. And my point is, I could give a rip about what society decides. Racism is absolutely wrong because human beings are created in the image of God. They have an intrinsic, innate value that is not determined by my opinion, your opinion, or the United States government's opinion.
How is God giving us value more intrinsic than us giving ourselves value?
Because if there is no God, your number came up in a Monte Carlo game, you are a freak accident of nature. You do not get value out of a freak accident. You get nothing. You get meaninglessness. Then you have to create your own value. But if you choose not to create the same value tomorrow that you did today, you're not wrong, you're not right, because it's all a crapshoot. It's all, do you like broccoli or corn? What's your taste? Oh, tomorrow you like the other one more than the one you like today? Just taste. So, you want to be Mother Teresa today? Great, go be Mother Teresa. Tomorrow you want to be Adolf Hitler? Just your taste, go ahead. It's all meaningless, sir. Despair is honest atheism. Despair is honest atheism. Don't take it from me.
Really fundamental
Nietzsche,
logical
Camus,
disagreements.
Sartre knocked it right out of the ballpark.
No, I mean, you can't just say these things. That
Read
if
it
a
for
person
yourself.
makes a decision, it's inherently arbitrary. That any person can't make the. You're even bringing up Camus. You're even bringing up the people who specifically said that people are the ones who make decisions about meaning.
And it's all relative.
No, it has
It's
nothing
all
to do with
meaningless. Well, just read L'étranger by Camus. First lines of the book are the words of a young teenage boy who says, "Yesterday mother died." Or was it today? Who gives a rip? Life is meaningless. It doesn't matter whether mother died last week or yesterday. Life is absurd. And that's what Camus struggled with. And that's why Camus said the only question modern man must answer is, why not commit suicide? Why go on sucking wind and living? If it's all meaningless, if it doesn't matter whether you're Adolf Hitler II or Mother Teresa II, realize life is a meaningless trip.